You something that sounds almost unbelievable at first, that the biggest shift of the 21st century isn't happening in public. It's not happening in elections, in corporate headquarters, or in raging culture wars. It's happening quietly, invisibly, inside the minds of ordinary men who have stopped saying what they really feel. And if you pay attention for the next few minutes, you're going to notice a single thread, stretching from the freezing punishment camps of Soviet Siberia all the way to the glow of modern dating apps. That explains exactly why an entire generation of men is quietly stepping back, shutting the door, and being done with women in a way the world has never seen. And when this video is finished, you won't just understand why this withdrawal is happening. You'll see what it points to next. Not bitterness, not resentment, but a strange, powerful kind of inner freedom that no one ever warned these men existed. There's a silent epidemic moving through the modern world right now. Not a virus, not a political ideology, a psychological shift so widespread that it's become the emotional background noise of an entire generation. Walk into any bar, any university campus, any gym, any online community, you'll feel something missing. A certain spark, a certain drive. That old male instinct to pursue, to chase, to impress, to fight for a future with a woman, it's fading like breath on a winter window. What we're seeing is the rise of the checked-out man. He's polite, he's functional, he can pay his bills, he probably has a job and a stable life. But behind his eyes, the fire is out. You can almost sense it from across the room. He's not angry, he's not staging a protest, he's not looking to argue with anyone. He's just done. It's a quiet funeral for an old dream he doesn't believe in anymore. But to understand why, we need to tear down the easy explanations people use to avoid telling the truth. They're just lazy. It's a sex famine. It's video games. It's because they're weak men. No, these are surface-level excuses. These are bandages slapped over a wound that cuts bone deep. To see the real cause, we need to go backwards, far backwards, into a place almost no one dares revisit. We start in the Soviet Gulag. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the writer who survived those camps, documented an observation so brutal that it became an unspoken truth among the prisoners. When a man was arrested and shipped off to the labor camps, many of their wives, under pressure, fear, or simple survival instinct, publicly denounced them to save themselves. Many remarried quickly. Many acted as though their husbands were already dead. Not all women, of course, but enough that the pattern was undeniable. What these men learned was horrifying. When a man's ability to provide, protect, or offer status was wiped out overnight, the bond that was supposed to be love often dissolved instantly. As Solzhenitsyn put it, a man's misfortune is often met with a woman's practicality. In other words, a man is frequently loved for his function, not his essence. Now fast forward into a warm, modern apartment, a totally different world, yet the same logic quietly operates. Imagine a guy named Mark, 28, software engineer. Good income, own place, stable. He downloads a dating app, he writes a clean profile, he cracks jokes, he tries, he takes a girl out, pays for dinner, listens, shows interest. Next day, nothing. A week later, she's on a date with someone else. Mark doesn't feel heartbreak. He feels replaceable. He's one of 50. She's not comparing souls. She's comparing features. And the second a better model appears, his value resets to 0. He's the digital version of a gulag prisoner, discarded the moment his perceived utility drops. This is the loyalty paradox of the modern dating market. Technology has created the illusion of limitless options, and in doing so, it has destroyed the conditions required for loyalty to exist in the first place. When men feel like interchangeable parts in someone else's shopping cart, they eventually stop wanting to participate in the system at all. And the data backs this up. A 2022 Pew study found that 63% of men under 30 identify as single, compared to only 34% of women in the same age group. That's not a small difference. That's a demographic canyon. Research on mate value shows something even colder. Women, being acutely aware of their own value, are statistically much quicker to abandon a relationship when a higher value option appears. Men aren't withdrawing because they're fragile. They're withdrawing because their internal calculator keeps flashing the same message: error. But to understand the full weight of this, we have to step into an even darker chapter of history. one that makes the gulag feel almost tame. And to really grasp the depth of what today's men are feeling, we need to step out of modern life altogether and walk into one of the darkest episodes in human history. Because the truth is, what's happening now isn't new. It's not a glitch. It's not a cultural fad. It's an ancient pattern that reappears every time a man's utility collapses, and the consequences are always the same. Let's go back to the 3rd century, during the plague of Cyprian, one of the most horrifying pandemics Rome ever faced. Entire cities were choking on the smell of death, streets filled with corpses, civilization buckled, and when society fell apart, something else fell apart with it, the loyalty that many men believed would carry them through any storm. Accounts from that era, private letters, diaries, early Christian writings describe wives leaving their sick husbands behind, fleeing the cities, taking what resources they could. They weren't villains. They were survivors running on instinct, and the instinct was simple. A man without function becomes a liability. Whether it was the gulag or the plague, the pattern was the same. When a man could no longer provide protection, status, or stability, when his function collapsed, the bond for a significant percentage of women dissolved with it. Now, bring that same principle into today's world, and suddenly, everything makes sense. Picture another modern man, David, 32, 5-year relationship. He was loyal, steady, planning a future. He saved for a ring. He sacrificed. He did everything a man is supposed to do. Then one abrupt round of layoffs hit his company. In a matter of days, his identity as a provider cracked. He wasn't useless, just temporarily off balance. But watch what happened. Her encouragement turned into subtle jabs. Her patience shrank. Her tone shifted. And then came the sentence every man dreads. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I think I've outgrown you. David didn't rage. He didn't bargain. He didn't break down. What he felt was a cold clarity, a stillness. He finally saw the gears turning beneath the surface of the relationship he thought was built on shared life and deep emotional connection. What he discovered was something men throughout history have learned the hard way. For many women, loyalty is conditional, and the condition is his usefulness. David didn't just lose a relationship that day. He lost the story he had believed in his entire life. And here's the part nobody talks about. His reaction, his withdrawal, is not stupidity. It's not weakness. It's awakening. This is the root of the great male retreat, a quiet, internal resignation, a conclusion men aren't shouting about, but silently arriving at. If my value can collapse that quickly, maybe I should stop building my life around being chosen. But here's where things get even darker. Because once a man realizes this, once he sees the mechanism under the surface, he enters a stage psychology calls the death of the ideal. Philosophers call it the dark night of the soul. Men online call it the black pill. It's the moment the fairy tale dies, the moment the illusion cracks, the moment he stops believing in unconditional love. Let me show you what that looks like. Imagine a guy named Alex. His third long-term relationship ended exactly the same way as the others. She found someone with more spark, more status, more momentum. One pattern, 3 times. And one night, Alex finally understood, not intellectually, emotionally. It hit him like a punch. His gym motivation evaporated. Food tasted dull. He moved through life like he was underwater. He wasn't suicidal. He wasn't hysterical. He was simply hollow. This stage is brutal, but it is also ancient. Every spiritual tradition has described it. The falling apart of the old self, the burning away of illusions, the collapse before the rebirth. What outsiders see as men giving up is actually the first step in a much older process, the breaking of the externally defined self, the provider self, the performer self, the man who tied his identity to whether or not a woman stayed. And the reason this process is so misunderstood is because most people only see the darkness at the beginning, not the transformation that follows. Because what Alex and David and millions of men don't realize yet is this collapse is not the end of their story. It's the furnace that melts down the old metal so a stronger form can emerge. It's the doorway between the man they were taught to be and the man they were always meant to become. And to understand that transition, to see how despair becomes the foundation of sovereignty, We have to look at what happens in the mind of a man after the illusion dies. When the illusion dies, a man enters a place that almost feels like another world. It's a strange, heavy silence, something between grief and awakening. And this is where most people completely misunderstand men. They think this phase is weakness or depression or some kind of emotional failure. They're wrong. This is the crucible. This is the part of the journey every myth, every religion, every hero story has hinted at for thousands of years. Remember Alex, the guy whose relationships kept ending the same way? After his last breakup, he wasn't angry. He wasn't smashing plates or ranting online. He simply fell into a kind of stillness. He stopped chasing goals that once mattered. The gym didn't excite him. Promotions didn't excite him. Even socializing felt pointless. He moved through his days like a ghost. What he didn't know was that this wasn't decay. It was dismantling. His old identity was dissolving. The version of him that built his worth on whether a woman chose him was dying. And death always feels like emptiness when you're inside it. But here's the truth. Older men know, and younger men eventually learn. A man cannot build sovereignty until the false self has burned away. The provider self. The approval-seeking self. The self that performs, impresses, and negotiates for love. Pain doesn't create that transformation. Clarity does. The moment a man sees the hidden rules of the game, he stops playing the role he inherited from childhood. And that's when something remarkable begins to take shape. This is where sovereignty enters the story. Sovereignty isn't about domination. It's not about being cold or numb or uninterested in connection. Sovereignty is something far deeper. It is the moment a man becomes the unquestioned authority of his own life, not ruled by approval, not ruled by fear, not ruled by the hope that someone will validate him if he performs well enough. A king is not sovereign because he is liked. He is sovereign because nothing outside of him can dethrone him. For a man, sovereignty means this: my value comes from my principles and my actions, not from how anyone responds to me. Once that realization hits, a man stops outsourcing his self-worth. He stops tying his identity to whether a woman stays, or whether a boss praises him, or whether society approves of him. Approval stops being oxygen, love stops being a leash, and the world begins to feel different, quieter, clearer, more stable. History is full of men who embody this inner posture: the Stoics, the monks, the master craftsmen, men who lived not in reaction to the world, but in response to their own internal compass. Marcus Aurelius, writing alone at night, reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." He wasn't reciting philosophy. He was modeling sovereignty. Or take the Japanese concept of ukatamo, the calm acceptance of life without complaint. It's not passive, it's total presence. It's a man saying, reality is what it is, and I remain who I am. Sovereign men follow that logic. They don't beg the world to reshape itself for them. They reshape themselves for the world. Once that shift begins, new questions appear. Not, how do I make her stay? But what mission demands my energy? Not, how do I become valuable to her? But, how do I become a man I admire when I'm alone? Not, what do women want? But, what does my soul want? And that's when the real transformation happens. Let me give you an example. There's a man named Ben. Smart, creative, worked a safe corporate job because he thought it was the responsible thing that women wanted. He dressed how he thought they'd like, talked how he thought they'd like, lived for approval, like most men quietly do. Then he went through his awakening, and instead of crashing, he started building. He quit the job he hated and opened a small design studio. Not flashy, not perfect, but his. He started learning woodworking on weekends just because it felt honest. He stopped scrolling dating apps and started walking alone in silence. He read philosophy. He built things with his hands. He began cultivating what ancient thinkers called arete, excellence for its own sake. And something started to change in him. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't trying to be noticed. He wasn't performing. He was becoming solid. His energy shifted from pick me to I'm good either way. Women could feel it. People could feel it. Sovereignty radiates. It doesn't chase. It doesn't plead. It doesn't negotiate. And here's the paradox every man eventually discovers. The less you need a woman to complete you, the more likely you are to attract one who respects you. But by the time this happens, the goal isn't winning approval anymore. The goal becomes building a life so rich, so grounded, so purposeful, that partnership becomes an addition, not a requirement. But this raises a deeper question, one backed not only by philosophy but by science. Does sovereignty actually lead to better mental health, better stability, better life outcomes? The answer is yes. And the data behind it is astonishing. To see the full picture, we have to step into the psychology of intrinsic value and what it does to a man who masters it. Here's where everything comes together. Not in theory, not in philosophy, but in something measurable, observable, and backed by decades of psychological research. Because this shift men are making, this movement from external validation to internal sovereignty, isn't just some poetic idea. It's a blueprint for a healthier, more stable life, and the science behind it is brutally clear. Long-term studies in positive psychology show that people who derive their self-worth from intrinsic sources, from their own competence, their own moral code, their own growth, experience more stable happiness, less anxiety, and far lower emotional volatility than people who base their worth on approval, status, or performance. In other words, the sovereign man isn't just stronger emotionally. He's biologically more regulated. His nervous system isn't riding the roller coaster of, do they like me today? Am I enough today? Did I perform well enough today? He's grounded. He's centered. And unlike the man who chases external validation, he cannot be pulled apart by the insecurity of others. Research on intrinsic goal orientation shows the same pattern. Men who pursue goals for meaning, mastery, contribution, not for attention or status, build a kind of psychological armor. Their happiness becomes sustainable. It becomes self-renewing. It becomes sovereign. But what does this look like in real life? Not in theory, not in quotes, not in history, but in the day-to-day behavior of a modern man. It looks like this. It's the man who goes to the gym not to get a body for Instagram or to impress women, but because he loves the sensation of strength moving through his own muscles. Something ancient, something primal, something no one can take from him. It's the man who pours himself into his craft, not for applause, not for promotions, but for the quiet satisfaction of mastery, the feeling of building something real with his own hands or mind. It's the man who sets boundaries, not to punish others, but to protect his peace. He stops allowing disrespect, flakiness, emotional manipulation, or draining relationships into his life. Not because he's bitter, but because he respects himself too much to be treated poorly. It's the man who feeds his mind with philosophy, history, strategy, not because he wants to sound smart, but because he's building a fortress inside his skull, a fortress made of clarity. A fortress that can't be shaken by rejection, heartbreak, or the chaos of modern dating. This, right here, is the real meaning of giving up. You are not giving up on women. You are giving up the exhausting, degrading chase for validation. You are giving up a rigged game where your value resets to zero the moment your utility dips. You are giving up the fantasy that your worth is determined by external approval. And in that space, where the old identity falls apart, something powerful begins to grow, a citadel, a center of gravity inside yourself. And when a man rebuilds from that place, something fascinating happens. He re-enters the world stronger, calmer, and far more grounded than before. He doesn't return as a hungry supplicant begging to be chosen. He returns as a sovereign individual who chooses deliberately, wisely, and without desperation. These men, the ones who stepped away from the chaos, processed the pain, and rebuilt themselves, not only transform their own lives, they transform the culture around them. Because sovereign men don't create drama. They create stability. They don't demand loyalty. They inspire it. They don't cling to relationships. They cultivate ones built on mutual respect, not survival-based transactions. And when sovereign men build families or partnerships, they do so from a place of strength, not dependency. This new blueprint of masculinity is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is not rebellious for the sake of rebellion. It is quiet, solid, rooted. It is the man who has seen conditional love for what it is and still decides to build a life worthy of unconditional respect, even if he must first give that respect to himself. And this is the real twist that critics never understand. The generation of men who are withdrawing aren't weak, they're early. They are the first wave of a cultural correction. They are the canaries in the coal mine sensing the toxicity of a system built on replaceability, transactional affection, and collapsing loyalty. Their withdrawal is not the collapse of masculinity. It is the first breath of a new kind of masculinity, one built on sovereignty instead of supplication, one built on purpose instead of performance, one built on inner worth instead of external validation, and the man who embraces this path becomes unshakable. A man who can love deeply, but does not depend on love for his identity. A man who can walk away from anything that violates his principles. A man who can stand alone, not as a punishment, but as a choice. This is the freedom that no relationship, no breakup, no societal shift can ever take from you. You are not giving up, you are waking up. And now the real work, the sovereign work, begins.